What's up, guys? Gilbert Burns right here, and I'm talking with Uncle Chael Sonnen with the best MMA channel out there, and I'm trying to build mine, so I need a little advice on that, Chael. My channel get big, but the main reason that I'm here is to get the real question. What you guys know already, I lost to Kamaru Usman, UFC 258. Done deal. I know a lot of mistakes that I made it, but what's the path now, Chael? What's the path now to come back? Who should I fight next? What should I be asking for? Let me know that one. That one I want to know. Give me the advice. Thank you.
Gilbert, I will tell you the hardest thing that you're going to go through for the next 2 weeks is taking your oars out of the water. It is very difficult mentally. That's one thing that a fight, right? I mean, post-fight depression is a real thing and not incumbent upon whether you won or you lost. You have all this buildup for this match, all your focus, all your training. Then you've got your group, your own friends that know what you're going through, and they're sending you text messages or giving you calls, and that's before you even get to the media and the cameras and the travel and the hotel and everything on the line. But when you have this extreme focus on something and then that something is gone, it should look post-fight depression. It's so true. And particularly when you get defeated, now you want to get right back in there. It's that old adage of this sport, you're only as good as your last fight. Well, we start to believe that at times. So now we believe we're of this spot of defeat, and we will do anything to get back in. Very hard to take your oars out of the water. And guys, I was reading about Gilbert Burns, and in addition to the video you just saw, but I've been reading about him. He was doing this interview, man. He threw every name out there you could possibly think of. He wants to get back to that title, and the fast track back to the title is through Colby Covington. If he beats Covington, he would go right into a title fight. If he needed 2 fights, he knows Michael Chiesa's out there, and he mentioned Khamzat Chimaev eventually is going to need a match. He'll do the fight. I'm talking about Burns here. He'll do the fight with Leon, but he's hearing that Leon is going to go with Muhammad. It was just one of these things, but my takeaway was not to name drop or try to associate who Gilbert should be or is likely to be in there with. My takeaway was this is the same Gilbert Burns that we knew and loved a week ago. Gilbert Burns has never turned down a fight. I will tell you from a submission standpoint, he's never turned down a grappling match, ever. And turning it down by saying, give me a whole bunch of money or give me a different date or they're all no. You can find tons of reasons to not do something, including just pricing yourself out of it. I'm telling you, Gilbert Burns is the same guy. He wants to compete with anybody. My only takeaway as I was listening to Gilbert do some of the math, right? He's going to be doing math, not just fighting guys. The math being, what is the equation that puts me back in a title opportunity? And there is no answer to that. Like Sean Shelby couldn't get on the phone and make him a promise. It just doesn't go that way. There's a lot of moving parts. He's going to have to compete, and he's going to have to win. But the mere fact that Gilbert mentioned all of these names, guys, this is why we've loved him in the first place. 170 pounds is dealing with some guys right now that don't want to go out there and compete. The bad news for us, they're the top guys. I don't know that there's any other division at the exact same time who is so readily unavailable to compete, except for Gilbert Burns. And the fact that he can be depressed, as I'm talking about, the fact that he can be wounded, the fact that his goal didn't get as far as he wanted it to, and all he wants is another opportunity to get back in there and try again. I mean, guys, this is what it's about. The word fighter has been corrupted over my lifetime. Now you're a fighter if, and then fill in the blanks. If you can throw a punch, or if you can throw a kick, or if you work on your grappling, or there's like all these things where you get to be a fighter. A fighter, when I was growing up, what it meant and what it means to me right now is the same thing. Somebody that gets up and goes forward when it's hard. Somebody who gets up and faces something when it would be easier to not. That's what a fighter was. And Gilbert Burns being out there, calling for these names, making it very clear he does not care who or when, but he wants to get back there and compete. Guys, he's a real fighter. He's a real fighter, not the corrupted term, not the fake tough guy, not somebody that had his hand out and thought there'd be a big paycheck if I'm in the right place at the right time. Somebody that's going to try when it's hard. Somebody who's going to get up and move forward when they'd rather just stay inside under a blanket. And it's something very special, and I feel for Gilbert. I've personally been in Gilbert's spot where you're so close to getting something that you work so hard for, but it doesn't go that way. And then what do? Do you sit around and complain? That's one option. Do you retire and just quit the sport and say, that was my best run and my race is over? That's one option. Or do you get up and try again? I cannot tell you for sure what it would take for Gilbert to get another title shot. But we can all agree that him doing nothing won't get him his goal. Him sitting inside, him not going to practice, him not paying attention to the division, him not looking for opportunities, him not taking opportunities when they come, will all not get him to his goal. And there's just a real refreshing life lesson that you get sometimes from sport. Sport, particularly at the professional level, will really let you down. There's a reason that we really need it for kids. From the competitiveness to the team nature to the hard work to being to practice on time to trying to have more points than the other guy when time runs out. There's real lessons that you, shaking hands, sportsmanship, there's real lessons for kids. But a lot of times kids watch the pros and all they end up is disappointed. The lesson and the message here coming from Gilbert Burns needs to be the loudest message in the room. It's easy to come out and do media. It's easy to get up and get to practice after a win, when the media is going to dote on you or when your teammates are going to pat you on the back. It's more difficult to walk through that door and see your peers in defeat. They don't know where to look. Do they look you in the eye? Do they look down? What do? Nobody knows how to act. It's one of those situations. Gilbert Burns is doing everything right. Gilbert Burns deserved that opportunity, but it was forgotten because of the distance between Gilbert Burns earning this opportunity and actually having the match. The story was a little bit lost of how busy and how active and how willing at any time Gilbert Burns was. So to see Gilbert get defeated, but to see him be the same guy, it's something that I really appreciate because I've seen it so many times the other way. Somebody wins, somebody gets, all of a sudden they got new friends, dating a new girl, driving a new car. All of a sudden they're not answering their phone anymore. I mean, I've seen it a million times in this sport. I just roll and every time I know how that's going to go. Not well. Not well. My own teammates that I reach out to, they'd be back to me within 5 minutes, and now it's a lot closer to 5 hours, or in some cases closer to 5 days. I know how that story is going to end. That type of guy, I know how that's going to end. When your head starts to get big and you start doing other things, thinking you're going to get the same result. And I could go through the list of my own teammates that had done it to me, but I would never need to call them out because they all know they did it and they all regret it. They all deeply regret it and they see right where they got off course and started doing things different. I only bring this to you because Gilbert being the same guy, wanting to get the same goal and waking up and pushing through anyway, guys, this is how we got here in the first place. And sure, there's not going to be some magical bow that Uncle Chael can put on this thing. Gilbert is not ending up in there with Usman and then fill in the blanks. Unless somebody gets sick, somebody gets hurt, they need a fill-in spot. Unless some match gets declared a number one contenders bout, unless you put enough space in between them. I mean, this is a real thing. But time does heal all wounds. And even if you were to look at Leon, and I understand that Leon is not about to fight Usman. But Leon was told if he wins his next fight, who was supposed to be Chimaev at the time, that he will then fight for the title. And the reason I bring Leon into this, in case you're missing the point here, the relevance is Leon's already fought Masvidal, or already fought Usman, but time in between. Time healed that wound. No problem to get him in there again. But there is many ways why I can sit here and very confidently tell you that Burns versus Usman rematch is unlikely in the short term. Burns getting a world title shot is not. I mean, don't ever assume that Usman's going to be there. Because Usman could get beat. Usman could leave the division. Usman contractually, I don't know where he is. He could be gone from the whole organization. I'm throwing things in right now. But I'm throwing them in to show you that if you're Gilbert Burns and you want to be champion, there's a number of ways to not be. Quitting, stopping, feeling sorry for yourself, not preparing for the next one. There's a lot of ways to not be champion. I'm not seeing any of those from Gilbert. And guys, if you were to go back and just study history, it is very common, in fact, to the point that it happens more oftentimes than not, where somebody contests for a world championship and loses their very next fight. And the question of why is that? Why is there a curse on number one contenders? Well, it's not. It's actually quite obvious. But when a guy thinks, okay, I might have lost, but I lost to the world champion. I'm the second best guy alive. I can beat anybody else not named him. When you start to think that, but then you use that not to motivate yourself to work harder, you start to rest. You start to take your eyes off something. Well, this is a co-main event spot. I'm good enough for main events. I just did a main event. This is a lesser spot, which means it's a lesser job, which means I can show up lesser, do less, and get the same positive result. It doesn't work that way. And as unmotivated sometimes as a former number one contender is going into his next fight because of those the lesser pay, the lesser media attention, the lesser placement on the card. What they always miss is the person they're competing with is viewing it from a different excitement. Oh my gosh, this is my first time in a co-main event. This is my first time getting to compete with somebody who competed for a championship. All the things that could possibly unmotivate the former title challenger is being used as motivation for his or her next opponent. Very simple, but it's the very clear reason why if you go to SureDog.com and just start looking at all the people that contested a world championship in their very next fight, they get beat. More times than not. It's something around 80%. I'd quote it for you, but I misplaced it in my mind. It's somewhere around 80%. So you want to be very aware of those things. You want to make sure you study and observe those things and try to figure out why. Because if it happened to somebody else, it can happen to you. Don't ever be the guy go, well, that will never happen to me. Oh, yeah, sure it will, unless you study it. Maybe somebody else can make that mistake, but then you must learn from them or you're going to repeat it. I think that matching Burns up today, even though that's what Burns would like, I think it's very unlikely. I hope Burns can just relax a little bit because he deserves it. And 2 weeks, I'm not asking for a ton of time, but 2 weeks will change the way this all looks drastically. This sport will move so fast and those wounds will heal in 2 weeks. And I think that's when you can start to settle in at an earliest as to who's next. And by the way, Burns threw a lot of names out. I know that Colby is looking for something to do. I like that. That's a mega match. I like that. But I'll tell you who else has done a very good job. And just matchup-wise, just off the top of my head, be very interesting. I'd be very interested to see Burns and Michael Chiesa in there. And I think we do all need to follow my own advice, which is let's take 2 weeks. As it pertains to Burns, let's take 2 weeks. Let's relax. Let's let Burns relax. Let's see how this matures. But I would throw at you early. I believe in 2 weeks we need to revisit the idea of Burns and Chiesa.